and Pat Vacher.
My understanding is that the termination of our wonderful Christian firefighters boils down to people believing in the media propaganda. If you've been jabbed, you're safe. If you've not been jabbed, then you're dangerous. This is so wrong and it's ridiculous because it's not true and it's divisive to Redmond. So let's listen to the science and the truth. CDC Director Walensky stated on CNN, what the vaccines can't do anymore is prevent transmission. So in other words, if you've been jabbed and you know who you are, then you could be a spreader. Dr. Anthony Fauci said on NPR, we know as a fact that vaccinated people with COVID-19 are capable of transmitting the infection to someone else. So in other words, if you've been jabbed, you could be a spreader. The 2008 Nobel Prize winner in medicine, Dr. Luc Montagnier, he said, the vaccines don't stop the virus. They do just the opposite. They feed the virus and they facilitate the development into stronger, more transmissible variants. So in other words, if you've been jabbed, you could be a spreader. Dr. Martin Kulldorff, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, the bottom line is that these vaccines do not prevent transmission. In other words, if you've been jabbed, you could be a spreader. Dr. Sunetra Gupta, infectious disease epidemiologist at University of Oxford, he said, it is really not logical that to use these vaccines to protect other people. I don't think they should be forced simply because this vaccine does not prevent transmission. So if you think the logic of it, what is the point of requiring a vaccine to protect others if that vaccine does not durably prevent onward transmission of the virus? In other words, if you've been jabbed, you can be a spreader. Well, I'll tell you who's not a spreader. It's our wonderful Christian firefighters who've not been jabbed. They have the very, very best and safest defense against COVID because they got COVID and now they have natural immunity. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, an MD and professor at Stanford University, he was speaking in regard to the recent COVID vaccine policy, and he said, based on my analysis, any policy that does not recognize natural immunity is irrational, arbitrary, and counterproductive to community health. Dr. Martin Kulldorff, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, said prior COVID infection provides better immunity than the vaccines, so vaccine mandates are not only scientific nonsense, they also are discriminatory and unethical. Dr. Fauci says the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself. A very recent study by the CDC on January 28th shows that those who have recovered from COVID-19, and that includes our wonderful Christian firefighters, have more protection against COVID infection than the vaccine-induced immunity. So the bottom line is terminating our safest firefighters is evil and harmful to the residents of Redmond. The natural immunity firefighters are safer than the jabbed firefighters, so there's absolutely zero justification for their terminations. And these completely unjustified terminations are setting up Redmond for an enormous lawsuit.